May 19th, 2021. Any comments or questions on the regular meeting minutes from May 19th? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion in a second to approve the regular session meeting minutes for May 19th, 2021.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the regular session meeting minutes for May 19th, 2021. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes. Now, I will go back to 8.0, the consent agenda items. On the consent agenda items, we have 8.1, approved bills for payment, 8.2, supplemental pay for June 2021, 8.3, MSBA full maintenance service agreement for the 2021-2022 school year, 8.4, new balloon therapy SLP summer school service agreement, 8.5, disposal of outdated equipment, and 8.6, content filter renewal. Any questions or comments on the consent agenda items?
What exactly is new balloon therapy?
I'm sorry.
What exactly is the new balloon therapy?
It's an outside contract that services students. Well, they have contracts speech language pathologists, and they're someone to help with summer school. So we have to contract it out to be able to provide services to our students. It's not an outside balloon.
Any other questions about the consent agenda items? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion in a second to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda items 8.1 through 8.6. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes. 9.0 communications, 9.1 correspondence.
Yes, you have a thank you card from Riley Foster, just graduated. She received a scholarship from the Education Foundation, and she wanted to thank the entire Board of Education for that opportunity.
Okay. 9.2, consider FY22 board priorities.
Yeah, I included, or did I? I think I included your current priorities. You currently have 8 priorities. That's quite a lot. It would be my recommendation that we try to pare those down. However, these are your priorities, and you will tell us what you'd like frequent updates on and so forth. I do have some thoughts for you to maybe start the discussion, and interested in hearing the direction you'd like to go. But the first priority, increase external communication and customer service with the community, civic leaders, and patrons to educate on school funding issues and other important district topics. This, the school funding issues, that part of the language of this priority was added when we were trying to pass the levy increase to build Eagle Heights Elementary and projects associated with that. So not that doing these things is still not important, but as it's worded, I'm not sure that it still rises to the level of needing to be a board priority. If you go on down, third from the bottom, strategic vision for early childhood education. I suggested this priority as a means to provide more accountability to the administration, to get some type of expansion in our early childhood programming. That is ready to launch. Mrs. Ambrosen has worked tirelessly along with her team to get that up and running. And after a lot of legwork and help from a lot of people, that's ready to go. So that one is not as relevant as it once was. I certainly want to continue to focus on those services and how can we continue to raise the bar and expand our opportunities for our young students. But that priority is not as high of a priority as it was. And then the last one, collaborate with peer districts and agencies in an effort to provide quality instructions to our students during times of the coronavirus pandemic. As we recently found in summer school, the coronavirus is not absent from our communities. It's very present in the Smithville community right now. So this is not irrelevant. We still need to focus on how we work through things with area school districts. But this happens at a very high level and it's happening organically. We meet frequently. The superintendents meet frequently in the Northland. We meet frequently in the Metro. Kauffman Foundation sponsors a collaboration. So this is happening organically, and it would happen if it were a board priority or not. So I don't know that that's necessary to have as a priority. So if you wanted to eliminate as many as 3, those could be 3. Again, not that those aren't important, and we shouldn't be making these things a priority, but it is a bit of a challenge to try to get all of these some face time, if you will, with the board throughout the course of a school year when there's this many. So a reduction would be in order, and those would be 3 that I think would be candidates for a reduction, or at least rewording. And you don't have to make decisions tonight. You don't have to know exactly what you want to do by the end of this discussion. But we do need to start looking to what's important to you and what do you want us to keep you very updated with on.
I think the financial.
I think that our finances are something that we need to keep an eye on this year. Since it is our policy to work back towards, I know the one goal there's talks about moving back to 21% reserves, but it also has the coronavirus hooked in there.
Yeah.
Fourth one from the bottom.
And that's another note that I had that I didn't mention. We could reword that one. Although, we're still working through financial implications of the coronavirus. We have ESSER 3 money coming this school year. But to me, what's important in this statement is fiscal responsibility and then building reserve balances, getting on a course towards the 21%. So we could perhaps salvage that part of the statement and maybe drop the coronavirus part of that statement.
I like the idea of getting down to 5. 5 is kind of industry standard for the number of goals you can have that you can actually focus on for a year.
Any other comments or questions on the board priorities? So possibility we could do it in a memo. Possibility we could do it in a memo, come up with an agreed upon list of 5, and that way we could view them and have an idea of what's coming at us for the July meeting to approve.
Yeah, it won't take me long at all to revise this per the conversation, to take the fiscal responsibility item, reword that one, and then strike through the other 3 and present that to you and see what your thoughts are next month. I can get it in a memo in advance, and then you can let me know what your thoughts are next month.
Okay, 9.3, Assistant Superintendent for Academic Services, Dr. Cradfield.
There are just 2 items that I will update you on this time. The summer school update that I was
prepared to provide is very different than what we have to share, and that will be during COVID. So, but I do want to share with you that last week, Carol Noker, our real world learning and community partnership facilitator, along with Jennifer Robinson, high school counselor, and 2 of our high school social studies teachers, Jake Sobey and Megan Klein, and I participated in a week-long professional development opportunity that was put on by the Missouri Chamber and the Kauffman Center. And so it was focused on market value assets, specifically client-connected projects. And if you recall, a few months ago, Dr. Shute shared with you that he had inherited quite a few artifacts from the history of our school district. And at that meeting, we had discussed perhaps having students create a museum. Well, we are the client. Megan and Jake are going to be the teachers who help students create a museum using those artifacts. So they will be working on a client-connected project. So it was a really wonderful experience. We learned about a lot of different industries in the Kansas City area. I think it was very eye-opening for everyone who participated. You know, the opportunities for our students in the local industries, those who provide their own training programs, the other benefits associated with working for some of these companies, such as tuition assistance. And, you know, every time we have an opportunity to learn more about those, you know, chances for our students, we become better at helping them explore those. So it was a great week. I'm glad I participated, a very well put together program. And we have 4 additional meetings throughout the school year. The first one will be in September, and that is where we will pitch our client connected project to a team of industry leaders and people from Kauffman, and we'll be excited to update you on that as we go through the school year. The other item that I wanted to discuss with you is the 2022 graduation site. As you recall, the year before this one, we had graduation in the stadium, and that was actually received fairly well by many members of our community, our staff, our students. We had already paid for graduation at Cable Dahmer. So that is one of the reasons why we continued with that venue for this year. But this would be an opportunity if the board wanted to explore a different venue, such as our stadium.
I know I'll be participating in that as my son's graduating, and I've talked to you know, a lot of the other parents, and I think, you know, a lot of people are excited about maybe doing the stadium again. I think that was well received. It felt personal. It felt like it was, you know, we were graduating. We weren't having to drive somewhere and you know, go to a big stadium in, you know, place, and it wasn't, you know, our place, I guess, maybe. So, you know, I don't know, last year, did they ask people? Did they ask the
We surveyed in September. We surveyed the parents of seniors as well as the seniors. The students were the ones who were most in favor of Cable Dahmer. The parents actually went a little bit more toward the stadium. When we put this together, the students went out. So that was part of the decision-making process for last year. You know, there are definitely pros and cons of each location. To actually sit in the stadium, it would not be, you can invite all 20 of your family members. There's just not that much seating in our stadium. Whereas at Cable Dahmer, for the most part, you can invite anybody you want to and bring as many guests as you would like. Then there's also the weather to consider. Also, but at the stadium, you know, you can sit around, you can sit on the lawn. There are other spots where you could sit besides the stadium as well. So,
What's the challenge of the construction occurring at our stadium? That
I'll let Robert address that, but we believe that at that time we would be able to host graduation on the field.
Yeah, our anticipated completion date is before the end of school in May. Even if everything wasn't complete for the project, the outside portion of that would be completed. Just be things on the inside there finishing up, like getting the weight racks assembled, getting the mats in place and stuff like that, just some finishing touches. So as far as the outside goes, the walks and everything would be in place. Maybe the grass would be perfect, but there would be no other obstruction outside that would keep us from doing graduation at the stadium. So
I like the idea of staging area.
if we had to, we would still use the pack as a staging area like we did before and have them walk down. If we're ahead of schedule and we were able to open it up, then we could use the activity center as a staging area possibly. It just kind of depends on what progress looks like at that time. Oh, construction stage area, there really shouldn't be. I mean, you'll still have the J Dunn trailer and things like that, but you won't have the heavy earth moving equipment that you see out there right now for sure. So.
What would be the contingency for weather?
So what we suggested this year was actually 3 different dates. The first date was a Friday evening. That was the preferred date. If there was inclement weather on Friday, then we would move it to Saturday evening. If there was inclement weather on Saturday, then we would move it to Sunday afternoon. So that was the plan that was recommended this year, and there are many districts that do it that way.
You could even have a 4th one if we were grading all weekend long. We could do the pack, but 2 tickets probably per student, and then we can send a fee to other locations. So, but in the pack, it was 800 some odd seats, so we could probably 2 tickets per. That'd be worst case.
What would be the feasibility of doing it in the gymnasium?
I think that's
I thought for sure I was unmuted. I was talking and I was thinking I'm unmuted. And the whole time I was not. My apologies. Yeah, Wayne, what's the capacity of high school gymnasium? So it is then larger than the pack. Does that include seating on the floor? Seating on the floor, that's where we could get the extra. So yeah, that's a possibility. You get maybe 3 tickets then or more. Obviously we want to have it out there, and if that's our 4th option, you just can't cancel graduation. The chances of having a rain date, be rained out Friday night, certainly there's a chance of that. And then again on Saturday night, well, I think it'd be less of a chance. Sunday as well, less further. But if we had that 4th backup, if we had to do this indoors, this is how we do it.
Are there lots of significant, would there be a significant cost difference? I mean, I would think so. I just didn't know what was all involved.
It's about $12,000 to have graduation at Cable Donner. So yeah, we have to obviously pay for that venue. There would be a cost associated with having graduation anywhere, but of course, we don't need to rent this space. We own it. So yeah, definitely money saver. It is, for those of you that went or have talked to those that went, it is a very special feeling, to do that on our field. So it's a pretty neat environment. It was hot that day too, but that didn't matter.
Just got to figure that was July because of COVID as well, and not the 3rd week of May or so. Any other comments or questions on the graduation location? I think my comment would be I'm all for the home field advantage. The year we did it here was it was nice bringing it back to campus. Some way to possibly even incorporate the bell, the ringing of the bell that used to happen. Right now, we've got a tone or a chime of some kind, but I think the home field advantage would be the best.
What would be the contingency for weather?
What would be the contingency for weather? I think my comment would be I'm all for the home field advantage. The year we did it here was it was nice bringing it back to campus. Some way to possibly even incorporate the bell, the ringing of the bell that used to happen. Right now, we've got a tone or a chime of some kind, but The bell was always
Still operational?
part of graduation.
Wayne used to ring the bell.
With the right mallet, it could be operational,
Yeah,
yes.
sure.
Maybe not the clamper, but. Okay. Is that all you have?
That is all I have. So is the direction that we would like to have graduation on our stadium? Or would you like me to gather information from students and parents?
So that survey you sent out was for last year's graduating class? What's the time frame? How fast do you have to,
Oh, gosh. Well,
for scheduling cable Dahmer?
Have we put money down yet?
no, and we haven't even reserved a date with Cable Dahmer. Did you mute me? Because I didn't mute me. Did you mute me?
My apologies.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's why I didn't unmute.
We would need to reserve a date with Cable Dahmer, and when we do that, we put down a deposit. We probably would need to have a decision by August.
So could we query the students and parents and say, hey, where do you guys want to be?
We can do that.
I mean, you might as well have that piece of information, right? Knowing that there's a fiscal side of this too, the board needs to consider.
My comment would be just be careful what you ask for, because you may end up spending the 12 to 15,000. There's nothing says Cable Dahmer won't raise their prices.
Yeah.
That we get a response back from the students and or the parents that they want to go down there, and why are you asking if that's not what you're going to do? So
We did that survey last. Oh, let me unmute here. When we did that survey last, what were we estimating the number of tickets to be if you came to the stadium for graduation?
It depended on whether we're under COVID restrictions or not. So I don't think that the number that we used in the survey last year would be the appropriate number if we're considering that there would not be COVID restrictions. But I can work with Wayne and Darren and get a capacity estimate for the stadium. And I could include a statement that there are financial considerations here as well. That this is one of the data points that we're looking at.
One piece of information to help make a decision. It doesn't mean that the popular vote's definitely going to decide it, right?
Well, how did we communicate that last year in the constraints of COVID and financial constraints?
We had already paid for it last year, so we didn't, it was already paid in full.
When you sent out the survey, it was?
Correct. Yeah, because we had paid for it.
So what was the purpose of the survey?
Because the stadium had received such, high reviews that we thought.
You were going to cancel maybe?
And they gave us the choice of returning our money or letting it ride.
Gotcha.
For the next year, and we could have made that decision at any time.
Because you might get feedback that says, let's do it at the stadium too.
Oh yeah, I'm sure we will.
I'll work on that survey. I'll send it to you guys so you can take a look and provide any feedback on wording, and then we'll get it out and see if we can't have all that information back to you so we can make a decision in August. Thank you.
thank you, Dr. Cradlefield. 9.4, construction update.
I have a presentation. I'm going to share my screen real quick here. Okay, so we have the construction update for June. Of course, we have our project overview lists again. This is an updated list for Eagle Heights. You can see that we are almost complete with Eagle Heights, and I'm gonna go ahead and show some of those pictures. This is a collaboration corridor that we have between the two elementary classrooms. This is what one of the classrooms looks like right now. You can see that we have the accent wall painted. We have the cabinetry in. Don't have any flooring yet. You can also see the cabinets over here to the side besides the student hangers there as well. There is more of the teacher space on that wall. You can see pretty much all the ceiling tiles are in place in those areas. This is one of the restrooms. We have all the tiling on the wall, all the dividers and partitions in those areas as well. The residence flooring and also the tiling on the outside of those restrooms as well. So you can see that Eagle Heights is moving along really well. I anticipate after July 4th, it'll pretty much be wrapped up and ready to go. We have all the fire systems checked out. We have the sprinkler system active. We have the networking for data connected to that end. There's just some odds and ends like the projectors and the marker boards that we need to get hung up. But for the most part, Eagle Heights is I would say 95% complete. So very happy with how that project's going. Our activity center, of course, these are the two internal renditions that you guys have seen over the years. Here is one of the photos that you have if you are at the field looking back up the hill, or what used to be part of that hill. What I want to point out there, what you see in that hill right there is actually conduit that has our internet connection line for our entire campus. And so basically they scraped along there to see as far as they could go and had to stop because we were still waiting on AT&T to get their engineers to move that. The good news is on Monday, they finally gave us the numbers for that. We got that submitted with a purchase order, ready to go. Now we're just waiting on the date the engineers to come out, splice it and move it. That action will happen after hours, probably sometime around 8 or 9 p.m. We'll probably have to be down about 30 minutes as far as our internet connection goes. But once that fiber is spliced and moved, then we'll be able to continue our excavation and get down to level to see where our pad construction will be. So far, we have not hit any rock. Knock on wood, we also haven't gone to the elevation that we need to go yet for the reasons of this conduit. So here's another picture that kind of shows a little further back, the large view. You can see all this dirt disruption here is basically the water runoff to our retention area. And I'm going to show that next. This is where our retention area is. That white Morton looking building is where our track storage is on the south side of the stadium. And our retention area is all basically behind the softball field, past the fence, past that area there. So when we did this, we calculated this for all the retention area that we would need, even when we would be doing the 2025 project for the parking lot and the tennis courts on that hill. Originally, when it was just done just for the activity center, that retention area was up front by the shot put area. Having a large retention area that could hold water, have higher weeds, not be able to mow as much because of the water in that area just didn't seem like it was the right thing to do because we'd have to recalculate it anyway once the 2025 project was online. So why don't we do it right now to calculate for this, and then that way we don't have to disturb again. So that's what we chose to do based on the alternate bid we had and what the price on that was. So that's what that area is there for. This picture is at Eagle Heights. Of course, the other project we have going on is our playgrounds. We are pulling off all the mulch and putting in the turf for those areas. And so you can see that they have completed pulling off all the mulch in that area. And so now we're just waiting for synthetic turf to come in and put down their base and put down their turf over the top. And then this is what Horizon looks like with all the mulch pulled off and getting ready for Sinlawn to come in and put down their product on that. So moving right along, Maple Elementary, of course, we're waiting until summer school's over there to get that done. So we're just working on Horizon and Eagle Heights right now for those areas. So this is the timeline for Activity Center. Of course, I did update this. That AT&T fiber line put us back to November to enclose the building. We're still good for winter there, but we did have to push that back a month. We don't believe that'll push back our final timeline. So just the having the building enclosed. And of course, our HVAC systems are looking for next summer, 2022. Our playground servicing, you saw some pictures for that. We're still looking at August of 2021. And then we have our equipment on order for our kitchen hood at the high school. We're looking for that equipment to come in sometime next week. And then during July, they'll be doing the construction on that kitchen hood at the high school that will give basically some fire extinguishing capabilities that it doesn't have right now in that area that will put us up to code for our fire. So that's what we have for our construction projects, and I can answer any questions.
Robert, do we track what our deferred maintenance cost is?
As far as HVAC systems or
HVAC, boilers, you name it, piping, structure.
we don't have any boilers. So currently I'm working with a company called Navitas and basically giving them all our preliminary information. And then they're going to give me some performer documents. It's going to show, if we brought in new systems, what type of money that might save versus what the upfront costs are, see if there's any savings there. To be honest with you, we have done such a good job in the past of already taking care of our low hanging fruit, like LED lights and things like that. There's not much left there to grab from an energy savings point. Wayne's done a great job of staying up on those things and doing that. Over time, of course, you're always going to have more opportunities just because things age. They have to be replaced anyway. But honestly, there's not a lot on the surface. But we're going to go ahead and go through the exercise anyway with Navitas and see what they have to show us. So,
are they looking at the IT infrastructure too in terms of type of network cable, type of switch? I mean, I know you guys went through.
I don't have them looking at the IT side as far as Navitas goes. Are you talking about like
moving from Cat 5 to Cat 6, stuff like that?
Sure. So we're pretty much Cat 6 district wide.
Okay.
And to basically increase our, speed, basically you don't replace the actual cabling in place, you replace the switches. So they have multi-gig ports now that instead of running at 1 gig, run at 2.5 gig. And so that's where we make the infrastructure change, not pulling all the copper cabling out of the walls and putting in like Cat 6A that has 10 gig. And so that's been our strategy so far. It's worked pretty well. So we feel like we're in a good spot on that side, and I can let Randy answer any of those type questions too. So the one thing I will mention, I would love to do more with is our roofing. I would love to be able to have a budget entry for roofing so we can cycle through and do certain roofs, certain years. Wayne's been able to take care of that through project savings in the past, be able to do that. This project savings cycle is going to be tough because materials have just shot through the roof on what they've cost. So I doubt we see the project savings that we've seen in the past to do those type of things. So we're going to have to find creative ways or maybe add more roofing to our 2025 project than we wanted to because we won't quite maybe see the savings this time around. So that's the one thing I would love to have is some sort of budget carved out for, roofing repair and redo certain roofs every year so don't get behind. We don't have that right now. We have to just hope that we have savings on different projects that we have along the line. So
The roofing would be a good thing to keep in mind, especially as Project Diode comes online. That's be a good use of some of that funding.
Yeah, we hope we have some. Time will tell, if we hit rock or not will be a big factor. Some of these delivery dates, if some of the material, are behind and we have to pay overtime on the project to kind of get them in before our timelines, that could raise some pricing. There's a lot of different factors that could happen. And so Eagle Heights went great. We came in below budget and our, very little change orders that matter of fact, a lot of change orders decrease costs that we ended up doing. So Eagle Heights went great. I hope Activity Center goes just as good. But our initial bids were a little higher based on the material increases that we've been seeing. So.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Hedgeforth? Thank you.
Thank you.
9.5, comments from the audience. Do we have anyone that wants to speak this evening? Okay, hold on just a minute. If you're going to speak, I've got a little blurb here. Yeah, I've got it. Okay, this is an opportunity for members of the audience to make comments to the board. A total of 20 minutes will be allocated for public comment. Speakers will be heard in the order in which they were notified the superintendent of their desire to speak. If the 20 minutes expires prior to all speakers being heard, any speaker not heard may submit their comments in writing to the district office. Individuals addressing the board should state their name, address, and limit their comments to no more than 5 minutes. Items or issues related to specific personnel should not be discussed in open session. We have Whitney Carlisle speaking on COVID guidelines. Please.
the box that we're doing something. From recess separation to lunch cohorts, I speak for many when I say, let's stop this. Instead of adding a ridiculous rule of making kids and staff stay home for 2 weeks when they are not sick, can we use logic or reasoning? I am interested to hear the numbers of all the students who were quarantined this last year. How many went on to become sick? Are the rules you are implementing irrational when weighed against the reality of the situation? Let's not allow the last I heard 8 positive summer school cases to use this as a "I told you this would happen" moment. But instead, let's make sure the rules fit the actual knowledge we have about COVID. Our kids are not in danger of this illness. Adults can be vaccinated, period. Sick, stay home, healthy, welcome to school. I've personally talked to multiple teachers, and they are upset about these quarantine rules. They want to be without masks, completely normal. For families all across the community, I plead with you to do everything you can to ensure kids can have a normal school year. Stay strong. We're counting on you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 10.0, program evaluation, comprehensive strategic improvement plan update.
Thank you. I provided a chart that shows our progress toward our strategic plan. And I also provided a memo that gave some highlights. And so just a few things there that I'm particularly proud of considering our circumstances this year. There are areas where we gained traction that I didn't anticipate that we would. And of course, there's some areas where we were hoping to make some gains this past year, but because of restrictions, we're not able to it. And most of those had to do with our community connections. We have several tactics that are very heavily tied to connecting with the community as far as resources as well as career and connections such as that. But I'm anticipating some great movement regarding the career connections with the hiring of Carol Noker as our real world learning and community partnership facilitator. Just in our conversations over the last few weeks, she's already made some great connections with community businesses and community partners. She's already built a rapport and trust with these individuals, and I think that is going to serve us so well as we move forward on that particular part of our strategic plan. We are moving toward an RTI, or response to intervention program, at all of our elementaries. The building administrators, several district administrators, and our curriculum facilitators are actually embarking on some intensive PD on that for the next few weeks. That will help us lay a framework for providing both enrichment and intervention for students on a daily basis, so that they are we're able to move every student and meet their needs a little bit better. With our Missouri Model District, we continue to focus on evidence-based and research-based instructional strategies. Specifically for the last few years, we have been focusing on developing assessment-capable learners, which is really about helping students analyze their own assessment data so that they can set goals for themselves and take a little more ownership of their learning. It's very, very powerful work, and we're seeing great gains across the district. Our continued emphasis on cooperative learning structures, which actually was part of our previous strategic plan. That's something that we have a great foundation for and have carried forward. Really hits all of the soft skills. Last week when we were participating in the Career Connection program through Kaufman and the Missouri Chamber, over and over again, we heard every employer talk about being able to communicate, collaborate, think critically, all of those soft skills that are built through cooperative learning structures. And so we have many things in place that are moving us forward with our plan, and just wanted to share those successes with you. Also, if you noticed at the end of the memo, because of the potential changes in finances due to the data center, we feel like we really need to end this plan a year earlier than we normally would, and develop a new strategic plan that would take into account the change in finance. And so our plan is to convene a strategic planning committee again in the fall of 2022 and conclude the current plan for which you received the update this evening in June of 2023. That will allow us to, we'll have more information about what is coming our way through the data center as far as their partnerships with us, not only financially, but academically, and in some of our extracurricular programs. It will just allow us to lay a foundation so that we can hit the ground running when those things come to fruition.
And that process is a couple days long. That the committee is about 30 people, give or take, cross section of the community, the schools, and certainly we would like some board representation on that committee too. When you think about whether that's a possibility for you or not with your job, it is a couple of days that we would need you as part of this process. Then that group puts together the big picture, and then smaller groups get together and work out some action plans based on that work. So that's yet another opportunity for people to get involved, including board members if you like. Pick the area that is interesting to you and participate in that if you choose to. All in all, it averages about 100 people participating. So it's very, 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 very collaborative. The last one, Michelle facilitated. That was due to finances. We were really trying to do it as fiscally responsible as possible. Our preference is to use a consultant, and we used a consultant. There is a consultant that we really like that we've used several times, and so we would want to. And he's cheaper than other consulting services. So, but getting ahead of myself, but that gives you an idea of how we're looking at that.
It's historically a 5-year plan.
Historically.
What's the indicator behind driving mathematics as the focus?
Well, that has been a continual request of our staff when we do rounding. For the last 2 years, math interventionists have been a request. We are not in a position to hire math interventionists. It would be about $200,000 for us to do that, and we just can't. So by establishing a time in the day where we can use the staff that we have and provide training on interventions, we also have through the math curriculum that we use, the resource that we use to support our curriculum, iReady, there are diagnostic assessments that help you very quickly identify the interventions that students need. So we have a resource that we can tap into immediately. We felt that doing one subject area and having that be math would probably be our easiest transition. That also gives us a year then to provide additional professional development to our staff who are interested in learning more regarding reading interventions before we would then include reading. We also already have reading resource teachers in every building, so students who need interventions in reading typically are able to get them. So that's a little bit of the history behind math rather than reading.
Because I was curious if we, in our testing results and data that we get back, if there was an indicator there, but I love the idea that rounding information is driving that from a staff perspective. So
traditionally our students score better in reading than they do in math. The last couple of years though, we've seen that trend is, it's a little more fluid. Some grade levels are excelling more in math than they are in reading. So. But it really did come down to continual requests from our elementary teachers to have some type of intervention for mathematics. And the fact that we do have something that we can tap into immediately that will help provide those so that we have some time to provide additional training.
Any other comments for Dr. Cradfield on the strategic improvement plan update? Okay, moving on. 11.0 old business. 11.1 general financial review.
Yeah, you have the review in there, and Karen found some errors, and she would like to correct those. So go ahead, Karen.
Yes, it's on page 3 in the document where where it says last year-to-date expenses, the original document, that was a positive 30 million, and it should be negative.
You have the correct version now in
Correct
your
version is
packet.
negative, we'll check it now.
Questions on the financial review?
Thank you. 11.2, last month we selected 2 members, and I believe the original motion was to select 2 members besides myself to serve on the foundation committee. And by the time the vote ended, it was Susan and myself. So we basically neglected to add 1 additional member to the foundation committee. So look for a volunteer to serve on the foundation committee, and we'll go through the process of approving that like we did the rest of the committees at the last meeting. Is there anybody that would like to serve on the Education Foundation Committee?
Well, at the moment, I'm not assigned to anything, so I'm happy to participate.
Thank you for volunteering. Any objections? Or hearing none, I'll accept a motion in a second to approve Jeff Blinker as the 3rd candidate or the 3rd volunteer for the Education Foundation Committee.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve Jeff as the 3rd member to the Foundation Committee. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes. 11.3, the SIPGKC self-insurance financials through May 2021, and the timeline for the FY23 Board of Education benefit offerings.
Mr. Kruger.
Thank you. Just wanted to provide the board with information. No action is needed. All of this information that's being discussed is included in your revision of your FY21 budget to handle everything that we've talked about as far as the finances are concerned. As the year's gone along, again, we've had a very rough year in the self-insurance pool of Greater Kansas City with the number of expenses in relationship to the premium dollars that have been remitted. We've actually added about we've added $600,000 of supplemental paid just this year alone in order to remain at ground level. At the end of the month, which was the last, the fiscal year ends on June 30th. At the end of May, with the $600,000 of additional supplemental payments, we were still $32,000 behind for the year. Just this week, however, we received $26,000 and some change in pharma rebate that is afforded to us. So right now, without the month of June, we're just behind $5,000 for the year. When June 30th gets here, again, we will be either have a credit or be assessed an amount to be determined based on what we've used for the year. To somewhat offset this past year, again, the actuaries recommended nearly over a 20% increase in premium dollars. You elected, and what's built in FY22 budget is actually a 4.99% increase. You increase the board paid base from $590 to $620, which is a $30 a month per member increase. I did a little statistical run, and we've been in the pool as a district for 11 years. Next year will be our 11th year in the pool. We have averaged over the 11-year run a 2.67% annual increase over the past 11 years. So every year, 2.67. Some years have been none, some years have been more, et cetera. The average is 2.67% for the last 11 years. I also went back and calculated the 11 years prior to us joining the pool, and it was 8.59% average annual increase. Now, on the surface, that sounds like we're getting a really good deal, but I will tell you that in that second 11 years, the Affordable Care Act was passed, and cost, rather than becoming less, actually have become more. So for us to only average 2.67% has been very favorable, in my opinion, for the Smithville School District. Again, this year, we've just had some extraordinary costs that we've had to handle. And as a result, in being good stewards of taxpayer dollars, we are and have issued a request for proposal for a broker to go out and market the Smithville plan in a fully insured model to compare the fully insured option versus the self-insured option. The RFP is out on the street for a broker. We'll go through the process of selecting a broker. We'll come back and we'll work in the fall. You've got the timeline in your packet, but we'll look in the fall of actually writing the specifications for our plan, and we'll collect all our current utilization and data for the past 3 years. That will be assembled. That will be sent out to all the carriers. And then starting in the late fall, early December, late November, somewhere in that range per the document, proposals will be made by potential carriers. And then ultimately in February of 2022, a recommendation will be coming before the board to either one, go with a full insured model, or two, continue to stay with the self-insured model based on all the data and the information. Again, we're trying to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars, and obviously we're trying to provide the best benefit for our staff and retirees as far as the benefits that are offered. So that's kind of the process. It is it'll take a lot of work. Dr. Schutz is going to chair that committee, and Kim Davis is going to be side teammate with Dr. Schutz in working through that process. So I'll answer any questions that you have about that. But again, last month for the self-insurance pool, we were in the black about $4,400. The month before, we were in the black about $4,300. But the months prior, we were not, and not even close. So we're hoping for yet another positive month. I will tell you that I look at the week-to-week balance sheet, and since school has been out, it appears that folks are getting work done. And they've been going to the doctor and having procedures. However, I will say that because of the lag in billing, and it takes a while, quite frankly, we may not see some of those services until August or September as far as the bills are concerned. Nonetheless, we are seeing an uptick in services right now.
Hey, Wayne, is it possible to get a report, or can they run us a report, year after year? Like, I know the cost of care has gone way up. Can they run a report last year, this year versus, what's chronic? Like, what kind of health conditions are being treated? We're looking at chronic, we're looking at accidents, major surgeries.
Yep, we get a report every year from Cigna, so we can give you the top 10. They give us the top 10 by utilization for the pharma and the procedures. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it is something chronic, then maybe there's something we can do there.
Typically, it's not chronic. Like over the last year, our top 3 cancers typically in there, which we can do preventive care screenings, and we promote that through our preventive care services. Musculoskeletal is typically in there.
We did have some expenditures related to COVID, yes. And Smithville only paid for Smithville claims, and Smithville had some COVID-related claims. I can get those for you if you'd like. Yeah, there are, unfortunately, and not just Smithville, but unfortunately, a lot of lifestyle choices cause a lot of health-related expenditures. And changing those behaviors, there's several different tries at that, and nobody's found the magic pill yet in order to make that work. We've tried wellness incentives. We've provided free clinics. We provide, annual screenings. We actually provide or have a monthly savings. We had prior to COVID, but we had a rate reduction if you did certain things, so on and so forth. And it just doesn't change behavior. It's hard to change behavior.
Wayne, when was the last time we went out to the market to check?
For fully insured,
Yeah.
11 years.
11 years.
We've not gone out to the market for fully insured for 11 years. We've gone out to the market every third year under the self-insured pool for the network that we're utilizing. Every 3 years we've done that.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Kruger on the self-insurance presentation? Okay. 11.4, quarterly workshops.
Yeah, the board had a discussion last month about the concept of taking all of the program evaluations that you're presented over the course of 2 years and dividing those up into quarterly meetings. That would be 3 meetings per workshop. Again, you'd hit them all over the course of 2 years and give you the opportunity then to go a little deeper in some of these topics. I'm sure a lot of times you're in busy agendas. You may not ask every question that comes to mind because we really need the meeting to move along or what have you. I believe as your superintendent, the opportunity would be there to add value to those evaluations and to the conversation. So good concept. It would remove something from your regular board meeting. So in theory, you could save some time during your regular board meetings. So the attachment there is a sample. This is kind of what it might look like. And this sample was passed around the Citrus office administrators, and we made several adjustments and tweaks so that, for example, Andrea may have, or Denise may have federal programs and student discipline, and she may have several things all on the same night. So try to spread things around and put things where they make sense, such as student discipline. We're not going to do that in December, to review the year's discipline. So did some of that work. Great discussion with Denny and Sarah yesterday or Monday about some of these maybe even being pulled that are just really standard, and they can provide some examples, really standard program evaluations that we could throw maybe even into a different process, such as the student assessment workshop. You need to be careful there because that, that's a lot of information that you typically go through. It was light this year because of, COVID, that the tests were not as voluminous as they've been in the past. So anyway, so that's kind of the concept. As your superintendent, very open to it. I think it has potential, and we can tweak and do what you like with this. We would need a plan by August, actually by next month, because in August, the first one would be August 3rd. The board city school liaison meeting would be that evening at 6 o'clock. and then 7 o'clock would be your workshop. So would need to have some direction by your July board meeting.
I personally like it a lot. I think it will give me more time to focus on those programs, which I really want to learn more about. And I think it's the right thing to do for all of us. But I like that schedule and the idea.
100% agree.
Yeah, the only thing I kind of threw out yesterday was maybe when we have the budget workshop, because that typically takes, a full hour or more, maybe consolidate some of the other meetings so we can just focus on the budget workshop that night. And student assessment, that usually takes quite a bit of time too. So if we can maybe do 4 a couple of times, just to leave more time those nights when we really need to focus on those 2 things.
And I'll say one of my thoughts for Monday was basically that we're talking a 2-year rotating process, and some of these, for instance, staff attendance, student attendance, those are really annual discussions that we have anyway, that, there were a lot of things I thought on here that maybe not everything got pulled from our meeting. There was a way we can have those discussions still during our meeting to meet the ability to review these programs, but they needed to be done more frequently than every 2 years. So that we, there were 4 or 5 that we were looking at, kind of go down through. We talked about graduation rate. How long is graduation rate going to take to discuss? And what are going to be the questions? Is that something that we can, keep in our, just kind of not pick and choose what we want to take out of our meetings, but just have a healthy look at how we can, because we really don't want to wait 2 years to have some of these discussions.
In December, when the APR
data is released, graduation rate and attendance are both part of that. And I always do a report on our
annual performance report. So that would be the perfect time, I would think, to highlight attendance and graduation, and we do that on a yearly basis. So that would address that concern.
But I guess my thoughts were, I don't want to go into this with having 3 programs per, and then we start taking these programs out, and picking and choosing what we want to talk about during the APR discussion. And all of a sudden, we've got a meeting scheduled with one item in it, and we got a 15-minute discussion. So we just need to that was the discussion Dr. Sheets and I had, was, look and see where we can place a few of these program, to not create meetings for ourselves, but I think by looking at removing these from our meetings on some of the longer meetings, we have the opportunity to not go to 2 meetings a month, 2 business meetings a month, like some districts have currently. So that's kind of what my thoughts were on that. Any other comments or questions on the quarterly reviews?
We can take this feedback to the Central Office Administrative Team, make some possible adjustments, bring that back to you next month. I would suggest whatever we come up with, I'm sure we'll get in the middle of it and realize that there's some more tweaks that are available, and that could improve it even further. So I would like to make this change. I would like your board action eventually. I think you're changing kind of an evaluative system is what you're doing, and I think it'd be cleanest if you went ahead and voted on that next month. So.
Okay, if anything else on that, we'll go to 11.5, COVID update.
Yeah, it's been a busy week, as you know. Several cases we were notified of on Monday. Throughout the course of the day, or throughout the course of the afternoon, cases grew, end of the evening, still were notified. I think we had maybe one notification yesterday and maybe two today. So it definitely has slowed down. We are an outlier in the Northland for summer schools right now. Other summer schools are not seeing this. We do know that it has seems to have come from a local daycare, and that's not anybody's fault. That's just, you know, that's just the origin of the early cases. That's the commonality. So working through that, I'm going to let Denise kind of give the rundown, and she can kind of help let you know what we're working through right now. And then I've got some additional thoughts too. Michelle's going to share with you what we're doing with these students that are in quarantine to try to still meet some academic needs and services. So go ahead, Denise.
So as of today, we have 10 positive cases at the middle school. I was, sorry. Okay, do you want me to start over? Yes? Okay, so 10 positive cases at the middle school, 2 positive cases at Maple, which serves K2, 10 would be grades 3 through 8. 139 students quarantined at the middle school due to those 10 positive cases, and 44 at Maple. 4 staff members are quarantined, and one staff member has tested positive at that point. We started our rules with our guidelines for summer school, no masks. We have been, I have the guidelines here. Quarantining, if someone gets directly exposed, they have to quarantine for 10 days. We have changed that. So we've been working hard to figure out a way to lessen the impact of all the quarantine students, because as you know, we were notified Monday. We worked hard to contact trace for the names that were given to us. At that point, we feel like the Maple situation is pretty contained, but then the situation at the middle school in grades 3 through 8, we have had multiple students pop up, and there's not been a rhyme or reason with some of those. They've been in multiple grade levels, multiple classrooms, and so that's a little concerning to us. We checked with the area schools, as Dr. Schutz said. We've reached out to the health department on Monday seeking guidance. This is considered an outbreak at that point. Potentially they use that term, but that's 2 or more cases, so we use that liberally. So it's an increase in cases. So we're looking for guidance. We did change our guideline at this point. We said we still strongly recommend masks, but individuals are available to choose if they wear that. Quarantine, we did say that we will quarantine for 10 days. We're sticking with that. We did put the option out that if somebody is masked, if they choose to mask, then they will not need to quarantine. We're kind of running on our own guidance at this point with the no mask. Buses, we have to wear masks. That's a federal mandate, so that's not optional. And the only other change, I did ask the buildings to really look at their social distancing. How can they cohort groups, just to make that contact tracing so much easier. We have to contact trace, we have to report it no matter what. And right now, if we're allowing kids just to mix so much, then we're quarantining whole groups, and that's really hard on kids and teachers, as we stated. So how can we group kids or distance to the best of our abilities? They put some measures in place to help with that. And then we have turned off our water fountains. We left our bottle fillers open and encourage water bottles to be brought in again. So looking at ways to mitigate that risk. We're not sure at this point. We've considered, do we put masks back on? At this point though, that doesn't help the kids that are already quarantined. The majority of one group will come back next Tuesday at this point. So we're trying to seek guidance and look at every angle to make a decision that will best serve our students and our staff here.
I spoke with the director of the Public Health Center this afternoon, and
Mute, I'm sorry.
I spoke with the director of the Public Health Center this afternoon, and we had not connected yet. Denise had been communicating with the health department, and I felt like we were, the support was there that we needed, and we weren't really getting a whole lot of information. So I reached out to him today. I'd really like, to get a hold of him and talk with him. We did have a conversation, and this has not been run up the ladder to him at this point in time. So I did run it up the ladder to him, and he will get right on it in the morning, work with his staff, take a good hard look at the data, and then come back to us with, with some advice. So that's a bit of collaboration that's important to me that I've not had the opportunity to gather to make a decision on where I land on this. It is still like everything else pandemic. There's two schools of thought, and you're either on one side of the discussion or you're on the other side. Personally, I can see it from both sides, and I can argue with you from both sides. So, which makes it very, very challenging for the administration when you're trying to take care of our kids and staff. But a few things that rattle around in my head are, that summer school is an optional activity. You want every kid to be able to participate in every opportunity that is provided. But summer school is an optional activity for most students. We do have ESY, Extended School Year Services and Special Education. And that whole class actually is in quarantine right now. So those services are having to be provided virtually, but those students are still getting their services. Any change that we do is going to be very disruptive. It just is. The question is that disruption worth it? Is that disruption needs to be done in the sake of public health? What have you? That's just a fact. I mean, we found that out in the spring when we removed the masks the last week of school. It was a very, very disruptive process. So, we know that to be true. So we have 12 days of summer school left. There's 12 left. As Denise mentioned, these kids will be coming back towards the end of summer school. It's such a shortened time frame that we're working with here. If this were September and we're going through this, it'd be a very different discussion because we've got the rest of the school year to work through. We've got to do something here. So 12 days left. If we decided to bring back the mask mandate, I've got to give people time, right, to make adjustments, more time than you realize. Teachers need time to consider that. Parents need time to consider that. I'm sure some parents and kids will choose not to come if you're going to make me wear a mask. That's a decision they have to make. And for one day to say there's no mask, and then, oh, by the way, tomorrow we're starting with masks. I mean, give them a day at least, right? So if I gave them a day, now we're down to 11 days of school left. So it's just such a short window. It's difficult for me to pull the trigger and say bring the mask back, especially when I don't feel like I've gathered all the resources. That what I would suggest would be due diligence, and that's my collaboration with the health department director. Doesn't mean that we're going to agree on what needs to be done, but his position is to fulfill the duties of an area expert. I at least need to know what he thinks. I at least need to know what his recommendation is. So
I should have added that the previous guidance that we had received would be with an end classroom transmission of 2 or more positive cases in the classroom. At that point, you would shut down a classroom. We're doing that in the classes where you had the majority exposed. Like I said, I think we've had 4 classes that we've shut down. And at that point, that teacher is able to teach virtually, and if there's a virtual option for that. The other is, should we close the school? And at this point, we are not really wanting to close the school. We want to give the opportunity for the other students to attend. So that's the baseline data that we've been provided at this point. And so we have really, you know, from finding out about this Monday, today's just Wednesday, we've been really trying to do our due diligence of making the best decision as possible right now for our kids.
And if we did close the doors, scrambling to try to pivot to all virtual, and I know we've done that before, but in the amount of time that we have to be sure every kid, we don't have enough devices because many are already checked out, the students that are not in summer school. It would be a real challenge to pivot and go to that model. You know, when we did it in the spring, we had spring break to work with, which was very, very, very helpful. So that's, you know, that I'm not sure that we could pull that off. So we do have whole classes that are in quarantine, and you know, in the interest of wanting to give every kid an opportunity to make some academic progress this year, Dr. Cradfield's worked on that solution about virtual. So
for the quarantine classes,
we have moved to virtual learning for those students. Those who need devices have let us know, and we've provided those. Then when they are able to transition back, we'll just transition back into our in-person learning. We do not have the personnel, however, to do that for every student who is quarantined. So if there is a class in a grade level that is currently learning virtually, and there's a student in another class who is not able to come to school, then they certainly can participate with their grade level peers, but that just isn't an option for us in every grade level. We actually had a difficult time filling the positions that we had this summer. Our teachers just really needed a break, so we didn't have the applicants that we typically do. So that's just where we are at this point.
I do have info action here, and I provide the action part in case, you know, this board feels strongly about a direction that needs to be taken. Then you have that opportunity to take action. What I'm asking for is the opportunity to continue to gather my facts. I'll work as quickly as possible because they are a short window here, right? I expect that I'll have the opportunity to collaborate with Gary Zabarak tomorrow and to gather that information. And then, you know, if you can weigh in now and give me your thoughts or strong feelings you might have now, and I'll take that into consideration. Or you can call a special meeting if the board wants to, you know, come back together and you know, be the authority that makes that final decision. You can. Obviously, summer school will be over by the time you have another meeting. So I work for you. You know, it's your pleasure, and I can handle this any way you'd like.
I had some questions. Can I ask you some questions?
Absolutely.
What was our quarantining guidelines when we had masks on?
Same thing, you know, it evolved throughout the year. It was 14 days.
Right before we switched over?
10, it was the same that we started summer school with, 10 days.
So if I was infected and I showed up to school with a mask,
Okay,
everybody was in masks.
let me go back. Sorry, I'm trying to remember because we changed so much. So it started with both individuals had to be masked. Once the board voted to take masks away, it changed all of our guidelines because we were having to set up our own. So at that point, we were, if one individual was masked, then the person that's masked did not have to quarantine unless they had symptoms. And that's what we went back to right now.
So if the individual sick had a mask on, or if the individual near that individual sick had a mask on, they didn't have to quarantine.
If they're sick, you quarantine.
I'm talking about the individual who was exposed.
The individual exposed, if they are masked and they're not showing symptoms, then they will not need to quarantine.
And that's how we did it before we removed masks.
Before we removed that masks, they both had to be masked.
Correct.
The county wanted them both to be
And
masked.
were they quarantined for 10 days, even if they had a mask on?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's
And
all
it
right.
has changed so many times.
But that had just changed, right?
Right, but he's asking before masks.
Yeah, before we removed masks. The people that have been contact traced from the health department found their mode of transmission was outside the school district?
The health department has not done that. It has been the school contact tracers. We have a contact tracing team. It's been our nurses and our administration that's done that. It started with the daycare that notified us. It's the duty of the entity to do that. It's our responsibility to contact trace, and then we send that into the health department. So that's always been the school's responsibility.
So when someone gets sick with COVID, the health department doesn't follow up with that sick individual
They should.
on all communicable diseases?
They should, but I can't control that.
Well, no, I'm getting somewhere. Hold on. The reason I ask is I want to know, was the transmission from the people who were sick actually occurring in school, or was it elsewhere?
Well, initially, we don't know. We're assuming, I mean, this is a lot of assumption. Since the daycare notified us that somebody had reported being ill there, they were shared students. So they were notified first. I'm assuming it happened on like a Thursday or Friday. That's why we didn't know until Monday, because you have to go back 2 days prior. So if a student was diagnosed on a weekend, for example, they would let us know Monday morning. At that point, once they notified us of that student being ill, we would have to contact trace who that student was around for up to 2 days prior to that student being testing positive. And so then we would go in, and so your exposures for more than 15 minutes, it would be unmasked. And so that's what we would report.
Okay, but so essentially, we're not sure if they were exposed to each other in school
We
or
are
outside
not
of school.
sure. Now, the middle school cases, what is appearing at this point, because they continue. So we found out Monday, we traced, we had a few more students around those, and now it's kind of trickling down. There's some siblings, but then, like I said, all of a sudden now there's students appearing in other classes, but we can't ever identify. That's what I was trying to explain during the school year. Even it's very hard to identify like where, unless like 10 kids in the same class popped up. Of course, that would make it very easy, but at this point, it's a challenge.
No, I get.
Several did spread from that initial.
Yeah,
case,
it's not. It's traditionally, your health department will take a positive case, and then they'll figure out the origin of where that case originated.
All we know is we have a big spreadsheet that we fill out. We give all the student information, the testing information that we know. At that point, we submit it to them. That's what we have always done for standard operating with COVID. And then at that point, they are supposed to follow up.
Okay. And then of the ones quarantined, have we received any information back about positive cases there?
Some, yes.
Okay.
Some have. I don't have exact numbers with me, but some have called back and they have ended up positive.
Okay. And then we recommend that you strongly wear a mask now. Was that not the recommendation when we removed masks?
Yes, it was.
That you have the option, but it's still highly encouraged?
Yes.
Okay. So we still allow staff and students the option regardless to make an informed and educated decision about the environment they live in?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So I would agree that getting the information from Gary and his thoughts is one of those important data points that we don't have. As Ian kind of walked through, that we didn't remove masks, right? We allowed the choice to be made by the parents, and per the wording, strongly encourage, but allow the choice to be made. And I continue to believe that that's the right way to go at this point until we're strongly advised otherwise by health department and have to reconsider based on additional facts. So as you work through this as our administrator, that's my recommendation, my guidance.
I agree. We shouldn't jump to conclusions. I agree. We shouldn't jump to conclusions with so little information.
Any other comments or questions on the COVID update?
On the quarantine, does anybody, like you said, Denise, did we have to come up with that ourselves, or does the CDC say anything, or any other schools doing?
Yes, the real guidance, I shouldn't say the guidance given by the health department or the CDC, let me rephrase that, would be that both individuals must be masked. And then it would be either 14 days or 10 days. That has been the health department recommends 14. The CDC took it down to 10. We adopted the 10. That guidance is being discussed currently in the health department for the fall of changing again and being lessened. But that's not to be put in place at this time. So we're keeping abreast of that, but we had to come up with our own definition, our own guidelines, because we're already not following. We're trying to follow what we can, but we're also trying to give some grace as well.
That's what I wanted to, to say too, is, we have to follow as much as we can what our people, our experts are recommending to us. We're trying to make it as easy, but summer school is elective, and, people have the option to wear the mask. If they don't, then they know they have the risk that you might have to be quarantined, because that is part of what we're saying. You don't have to wear a mask, but if you don't, you might be quarantined. So.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, move on to 12.0 new business. 12.1 Fund 1 to Fund 2 transfer.
Wayne has several items here, so I'll turn it over to him.
12.1 is an annual item that you typically see year to year that allows administration to transfer a necessary amount from Fund 1 to Fund 2 because it's a state statute prohibits us from ending any fund balance in the negative. So right now we anticipate approximately a $264,000 negative amount in Fund 2, but we won't know that exact dollar until June 30th. So we're asking board for authorization to transfer a necessary amount from Fund 1 to Fund 2 to zero out Fund 2 on June 30th as required by state statute. We want to be in compliance. And one may ask, well, why is that negative? Why is that even negative? Well, basically, when the board sets, which you're about to do, actually consider your budget revision and your preliminary budget. When unrestricted funds are collected, they are deposited into a fund, either Fund 1, 2, or 4. For example, 100% of your money that comes from the state of Missouri goes into Fund 2. Your state aid all goes into Fund 2. About 20% of your local tax revenue goes into Fund 2. A large portion of it goes into Fund 1, some of it goes into Fund 3, and some of it actually goes into Fund 4. So we base the fund deposits based on state statute and based on historical trends. And, because of COVID and because of how payroll and summer school is unknown and the insurance, part of the insurance premiums come out of Fund 2, et cetera. We just never hit it exactly. And again, we cannot be negative. So we're asking for permission to move money from Fund 1 to Fund 2 to zero it out. That's what the recommendation is.
Comments or questions on the Fund 1 to Fund 2 transfer? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion in a second to approve the transfer of funds from Fund 1 to Fund 2 on June 30th, 2021 of a necessary amount to ensure Fund 2 does not end in a negative amount.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the transfer of funds from Fund 1 to Fund 2 to assure that Fund 2 does not end the year in a negative amount as required by state statute. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes. 12.2 FY21 third budget revision.
We're asking the board to consider the third budget revision for FY21, which is the current fiscal year. As the year has progressed, we've made modifications to the revenue and expenditure to reflect actual revenue and expenditure. There still are some guesstimations. For example, like we've guesstimated the cost of summer school, which will pay in FY21, but it hasn't all occurred. So there's still a little bit of wiggle room. Right now, I am projecting that we will end the year with approximately a $263,000 deficit for FY21. If you recall, when we started FY21, we were projecting about an $820,000 deficit. So to come down that much, you may ask why. Well, COVID, a lot of it is all related to COVID. So when we developed the preliminary budget, the governor had just withheld in the previous year a little over 500,000 and told us that they were going to withhold another 500,000 in the next year. That was included. They've since backed off on that and we're getting full payment. So that's been revised and adjusted. We've also had the good fortune from some federal relief in the form of a couple FEMA emergency disaster grants that we've applied for and received some funding. We've also gotten some funding from county CARES money via the county and the city of Smithville. And we've also received some emergency relief funds in addition to the sum of a little over $800,000 over the past 2 fiscal years that have been included ultimately in this year. So that's made a significant difference. So we've added all those revenues back into FY21. As I said earlier, though, we've had some additional costs associated in FY21. For example, the additional $600,000 of insurance payments, that those adjustments have been made in your budget. The additional cost associated with the COVID virtual learning, for example, and those additional folks that we had to hire and supplies and just costs associated with gearing up for that. So when that was all shaking out at the end, again, I'm estimating about a $264,000 deficit. I project that will be a little lower because again, when I adjusted the budget, there were allocations, for example, for like professional development that I didn't reduce. There were allocations for clubs, tutoring, some different funds that we were still waiting on submissions from staff to draw those down, but I had to make this based on the end of the month in April. A lot of that stuff was not turned in actually till it was due the 1st of June. So it may or may not happen. We've heard a lot of feedback that, because of COVID, a lot of folks were struggling to get their tutoring hours in with folks and struggling to meet the obligations associated with some of the clubs and building level initiatives. So while those funds may have not been spent, it ultimately will help reduce that projected deficit, if that makes sense. But I couldn't take them away because it's good. That's good stuff for kids, and we wanted it to happen if it could happen. It just unfortunately because of COVID couldn't happen. So again, I'm very pleased with how FY21 has turned out. Very pleased. And I'll answer any questions that you have. We will, the fiscal year ends on June 30th. And again, on June 30th, one of the very first things that we'll do is we'll make the adjustment from Fund 1 to Fund 2 to zero that out. And then we'll start to make some journal entry adjustments. Donna's been working with Karen to get that training going for quite some time, and they worked on it today, actually. And then we'll start on the annual Secretary to the Board report, which is ultimately due by August 15th. And we'll know kind of where we're going to land for sure. So.
Comments or questions on the FY21 third budget revision? Okay, hearing none, accept a motion and a second to approve the FY21 third budget revision.
So moved.
Got a motion and a second to approve the FY21 third budget revision. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes. 12.3 FY22 preliminary budget.
So the FY22, this next year's budget actually just takes over where the previous year ended. So when we, in theory, started working on FY22, that projected $260,000 deficit was still there, and we just kept working from that number. We don't start at zero, we start at that previous year number. Right now, I will tell you that the presented preliminary budget is projecting about a $422,000 deficit as we speak. However, I will preface that there are some additional recovery funds. It's a little over $606,961 to be specific, that'll be available as early as August 23rd of 2021 to make application for, that we will be able to add into this. So that projected $422,000 deficit with that supplemental payment will go away. Again, there's so much unknown as we present this budget. We don't know what our enrollment's going to be in the fall. We don't know what our tax rate's going to be. We don't know what our assessed value is going to be. We don't know where everybody's going to be on the salary schedule. We haven't got all our staff, hired and started the year. So there's a lot of guesstimations in here. But again, right now we're guesstimating about a $422,000 deficit. This budget does include a lot of progress over the FY21 budget. It does include rolling the salary schedule for both certified and non-certified staff. It includes the additional $30 per member per month increase in board paid medical insurance, which is about a 5% increase in medical insurance. It does include $500 for the certified staff in the form of additional compensation. It does include 12 cents on the base on the hourly on non-certified staff. It does include additional playground and lunchroom supervision at the elementary level back to the pre-budget restructuring level. It does include some additional extra duty supervision at the high school level. This budget also includes the program that Dr. Cradlefield talked about with the Kauffman Foundation. It includes the preschool program that's going to be housed at Eagle Heights. There's a lot. It still maintains the one-to-one technology that we've initiated in the district. It includes the third year of your ESIP program and those payments associated with that. So there is a lot in this FY22 budget. And again, we are projecting about a $422,000 deficit, which in my opinion is going to be offset immediately, potentially even before we start the year, with the infusion of that ERISA payment, number 3. But again, at the time the budget was actually developed, they hadn't given us a final number. They just actually gave us a final number this past week and told us the dates and how we were going to be able to apply for it, et cetera. There is a provision, however, in this, which you're going to consider. There's two mini provisions, but one of the provisions is, which you're going to consider in your next item, is that the district has to approve and post a return to in-person learning plan. And that's a requirement to receive these funds. So that basically it's kind of, if you want these funds, you're going to get back to school. And that's a requirement of these funds. We're already doing those things. So it wasn't a stretch for us. There's also some other restrictions in that 20% of the funds, a minimum of 20% of the funds, has to be allocated towards remedial efforts or recovery efforts from learning loss during the COVID outbreak when kids weren't in school. And they give us a list. There's 14 items actually that we can choose from on how those funds can be allocated during, using those funds. So the rest of the funds can be used for, likely we'll use that for salaries. Yeah.
And this is a one-time supplemental payment?
This is the third one-time supplemental payment.
Right. Is there any notion or any projection of FY 23 having something similar?
There is actually, we'll see, there's actually discussions for relief package.
Okay. And the reason I ask is because we know our expenditures and we know those expenditures are probably not changing drastically minus what we vote to either move or approve or support. But the revenues based on this projection, just thinking a year out past FY 22, the reality is we'll hit another $400,000 deficit based on it. And we all know based on, FY 21, we were 800,000, we landed at 2. So maybe this projection will come out in the black about 200 to 300,000, which is great.
Yes.
I hope that pans out that way. But just looking at FY 23, the reality is that revenue might not be there, but our expenditures probably are not going, facets of our expenditures are not going away.
Yeah, our expenditures aren't going away. And while that may not be there, already previously mentioned, there may be some additional revenue sources that may be available to help kind of offset that.
Yeah, well, and two, remember $600,000 in supplemental payments to insurance this year, this
Right.
FY 21, huge. That's not typical, obviously, for us. We've had to make supplemental payments, but not like that.
Not that much.
So I mean, that were flat. I mean, there you go.
Let me present this a little different. I think it's the same thing Ian was getting at. How much of the next year's budget, the 2022 budget, is our line item for COVID expenses? Because if we don't have that necessarily pulled out and we're putting this $600 URSA money back into the budget, great, it's good for everything, but it still means we are not operating within our means. We're overspending what dollars we have available. So if that's still the case, then we all need to see where we can tighten the belt and buckle down because we are not operating within our means. We're getting lucky winning the lottery through the URSA money. But if it wasn't there, we'd be in a world of hurt, and our deficit would be growing, not shrinking, which is one of our board goals.
To answer your question, there are, for next year, in next year's budget, there is 0 specific line items for COVID-related expenditures. The COVID-related expenditures that would potentially occur would come out of those line items that would traditionally be there. For example, if we have to buy COVID-related supplies, it's going to come out of the supply budgets that already are existing. They were not inflated next year for COVID. The previous year, they were inflated. I did not inflate them for next year. I anticipate that the things we have in place are the things we have in place and be able to carry us through. That we have a surplus of items necessary in order to offset costs related to COVID. So, yes, you are correct.
Any other comments or questions on the FY 22 preliminary budget? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion in a second to approve the FY 22 preliminary budget as presented.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the FY 22 preliminary budget. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes. 12.4, safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of learning plan.
Yeah, in order to get those dollars that have been referenced this evening, DESE requires that we provide this safe return in-person instruction continuity of services plan. This is a requirement that we post this. It's not necessarily a requirement that the board approve it. I didn't really see that anywhere, but we would like just for make it as clean as possible, we would like for the board to approve this plan, and then we can then publish it and satisfy DESE's requirement.
Comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion in a second to approve the safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of learning plan. Got a motion and a second to approve the safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of learning plan. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes. 12.5, personnel report. We reviewed the personnel report in executive session. Does anyone have any comments or questions that were not discussed at that time? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion in a second to approve the personnel report as presented. Got a motion and a second to approve the personnel report as presented. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes. 13.1, miscellaneous.
Yeah, just a couple items here. First of all, MSBA conference is in Kansas City this year. It was supposed to be in Kansas City last year. I did. That's nice that it's close and it'll be convenient. We sleep on our own beds, be with our own families and things of that nature. But please know for our new board members, the way that we handle this, because this conference is very important. It's a great opportunity for you to learn lots of things. What I've witnessed that's probably more valuable than anything, it gives this board time together outside of this boardroom. And you can collaborate on various things as long as we're not violating a quorum. But just be together and get to know each other a little bit personally, share some meals together. So there's that opportunity. We really would like for you to be able to attend. If you know now you cannot attend, let Karen know and she'll not sign you up. Otherwise, Karen will sign everybody up for this, okay? We don't have to sign up for lodging for you, save a few dollars, that's a good thing. But if you, throughout the course of her signing you up and the approach of this conference, find out you cannot attend, let her know as soon as you find that out, so we can drop you from that registration and then save the money from your registration. In the past, things have happened in the 11th hour for people, and sometimes you can't help that, and then we're out. That registration fee is out. Lodging is even a bigger hassle. Again, we don't need to worry about that this time. So we'll sign everybody up unless you tell us, hey, I know I can't make it right now. I know I can't make it. Or during the process, you let us know you need to cancel. Please do that as early as you can. Secondly, Westbrook has an opportunity here, a seminar on federal programs, internal controls, transportation, so on and so forth. If this is something that you're interested in, see Karen and she'll get you set up. That's all I have, unless you have any questions on those.
How long are those meetings on the 28th?
It just says it starts at 9.
3 hours. 3 hours.
Okay.
Okay, before we adjourn, since we are in open session, just thought I'd. Before we adjourn, since we are in open session, we did take a few minutes between executive session and open session, but I just wanted to again say thank you to Donna White for her 19 years of service as the board secretary. Very much appreciated. And next month, on the third Wednesday of the month, I hope you go out and do something fun. And don't even think about us, please. But I just, again, 19 years of being here the third Wednesday of every month for this and to put up with us. And all the calls, you know, on the weeks in between meetings. Very, very much appreciated. And we look forward to working with Karen going forward. So thank you again. And with that, if nobody has anything else, I'll accept a motion in a second to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to adjourn. No further discussion. Please vote. Motion passes. We are adjourned.
8:50.